We're going to learn about Shem Tov. We're going to learn about Shem Tov in Parshas Bereshis, not this week's Parsha. It's Ois Chofei, in the Sefer Baal Shem Tov. It says in the Pasuk, Vayomer Elohim Yehi Oir. So this process of creation is the process of every creation, every creature, everything that lives, everything that was, and everything that will be. And so all the steps of the process of creation teach us about the nature of creation and what's being created. And so here there was a revelation of light. The revelation of light means perception, access. The spirit can see, the spirit can perceive. When the spirit cannot perceive, it's called darkness. The fool goes in darkness because he doesn't have the vision to see the nature of the spiritual. He doesn't know what's right and what's wrong. He cannot keep himself safe. And so the original light, when it was created, Yehi Oir, is a light that shines from one end of the world to the other, which simply means the spirit can see in the body the same way it can see outside the body. Outside the body, the spirit, because it's a microcosm of the big macrocosm, everything that happens in the macrocosm, it knows instantly because it gets an update of who it is now based on everything that happened. And so the spirit knows all of reality when it's outside the body. But inside the body, it depends on the nervous system, what it will have access to. If we use the nervous system a certain way, it will have access to certain types of experiences and certain senses and certain sensitivities. And if we use it differently, it will be different. And so the Mauritian, when he changed how he thought, he also changed what he can see, what he can perceive. He lost access to himself. And then the spirit, when it's in the body, is disconnected from the spirit while it's outside the body. It can no longer remember, it can no longer know. And so therefore that light, the original light that we lost, that's called the Oir Agonus, the hidden light. It's hidden not because the light was hidden. It's hidden because we don't have the tools to tune into that light. We don't have the equipment developed in a way that we can tune into that perception. Some people gained it back. Some people could see and understand and know things without the senses. They didn't receive it from this world. They received it from the soul, because the soul knows everything. And so he says, Vayhi hu tzimtzum. Vayhi means that something here was limited, something came out less than the way it was originally. Shemati Omari, ki b'ris ha'olam hoya al yidei din shu tzimtzum. The creation of the worlds happens through restriction and limitation, which is called tzimtzum, which is called limiting and restricting the light so that it's not in its previous size, it's not in its previous glory where it has access to everything. And so the same goes for intelligence, limiting intelligence. Why does creation have to happen through limitation? Because if there's no limitation, then creator is creator, and that's all there is. And so if creator wants to be something else also, he has to be less than the original that he was. And so therefore, there has to be some type of a symptom. There has to be a limitation saying, I am everything. And this creature will be everything minus something. And then there are smaller and smaller creatures, and they are less and less of everything. But this is the nature of creation. The nature of creation is tzimtzum, restriction, making something that is less than the original. And so to each world, in order for the light of the infinite to shine in each world, it has to dress up according to that world. And then it shines in that world. And so, for example, in my world, the Or Ein Sof, the light, the infinite light dressed up how I perceive him. And that's his dress. That's how I perceive him. For me, he dressed up like that. And every moment, a different dress. Constantly, I see him in a different light. Constantly, he's dressing up differently. In your world, he's dressing up for you, the way that you perceive him. So in each world, he's dressing up according to that world. In the worlds of perception, he dresses up as perception. And in the world of the stars and the forces that they carry, he dresses up as them. In each one, he's dressed up. It's all the Or Ein Sof, it's all the infinite light that can dress up as everything, that dressed up as each individual thing. But in each of them, he has a different face. In each of them, he looks different. And yet it's him. So he is mitzamtzem himself, in order for them to be able to receive his light. If he would dress up bigger than that, then his light wouldn't be perceived. If he will come to us in a light that our mind cannot perceive, then we will have no relationship. And so when he dresses up according to how we can perceive, then that becomes the place of the relationship. If we evolve, we can perceive more, then we gain more access to knowing him. And then we know him in a way that's closer to his truth. The light is less restricted. And yet always, as long as there's a perceiver that's perceiving, and it's not just him, it's going to be a perception that's smaller than him. Because the one that's created cannot receive what was there originally, otherwise he's not a creation, otherwise he's that original one. And so it's all him, but with different dress, with different garments. Each place you find it differently. Some garments are not see-through. Some garments, they forget completely that they are him, and the garment is screaming, I am not him. The garment is fighting against him. And yet it's just the garment of him. There's no one else that can wear this garment. So in order for them to receive his light, to be able to interact with his greatness, everybody according to how much he can perceive in his heart, how much he can measure in the greatness of the source. But all this, it's just one being. It's just one light that we're interacting with. And so, everything is really one unity without limit. He is so big that not only can he reside in the infinite, and no one can move him and no one can touch him, but he can also reside in the infinite while he resides in the finite. The finite does not disturb him from his infinity. If we ask, how is this logical? Then we're missing the point. He created logic in order to have our brains run according to a certain order. But logic does not define him. And so he is beyond any type of form. He's beyond any type of limit. And yet he can dress up as form. He can dress up as limit. He can be that and that at the same time. That's what it means to be a kol yochel. He can be everything. He can even make himself small and still remain the big. It's all him. There's only one. And so if it's only one, it begs the question, how could it be that that one is causing suffering to himself? How can it be that that one is somehow split into many and he's fighting with himself? And so the answer to this is that this comes back to the nature of creation. Creation means tzimtzum, creation means din, creation means creating less. And so in order to create less, it means something here is going to go through a process of tzimtzum, of tsar, of din. This is the nature of creation. And so if we're forming a soul of humanity, and the soul of humanity is going to be a separate creation, so now we're going to have to put through that soul the experience of being separate in order for it to be less than the original creator, so that it can have a relationship with the creator. Because if there was no tzimtzum, then she would be him. There would be no distinction. And so here we are creating a distinction between creator and creation. This is where creator is becoming creation through the process of din, through the process of tzimtzum. And so he says, V'dinei v'yisurei odam, the din and the suffering, hem guf el haneshama v'chayis v'ruchnis shemeir al odam. This becomes the body of the soul. The soul is the place where we are one with the Creator. And the body is the place where we are separate from the Creator. Where are we separate from the Creator? With our suffering. The Creator cannot suffer. And so this area of suffering, this is where we separate from the Creator, and this becomes a body. And so that we can experience the soul. The soul is we are one with the Creator. That's the soul. In order for the soul not to become one with the Creator, and then we forget that we are a separate soul, there needs to be suffering. The suffering is the body that will let you remember that you were not one with the Creator at some point. And so now when you know that you're one with the Creator, the suffering will be what keeps you separate, so that you can experience that you are one with the Creator without actually becoming one with the Creator. And so this is creating a body for the soul that's going to reside in this body. The more the suffering, it means there is a bigger soul that's going to come into that body. And it needs to so strongly remember that it's not one with the Creator, that the suffering needs to be very great. Otherwise, it will just merge into the Creator by the great pleasure that it's going to experience. And so the suffering is the anchor into individuality. This is why you're an individual, because you have experienced suffering that no one else can know, it cannot be described. It's your soul. It's somewhere where you felt desperate for the Creator, and the Creator did not fill your void fast enough. And there you were separate from the Creator. There you had to disagree with the Creator, even though you didn't want to. And so that's the body within which is going to reside the soul that knows that it is one with the Creator. Dine v'yisrei odem hem guf, el haneshama v'chayis ruchni shemeir al odam, v'hu elihisa yizbarach shemoi, or en sof ha'mechayis hakol. This is the divine that is giving life to everyone. He's the one that's shining. And so unless there is a differentiation, that light that's all consuming is going to consume the soul until there's no soul left, until it's all back to the original unity. If a person can tune into this process while it's actually happening, so immediately then he is allowing the infinite light to transform his suffering. Immediately then, his suffering that started being as a conflict with the Creator, and now he's moving to the side of the Creator. He becomes more and more in agreement with the Creator, even while the suffering is still happening. He's changing from the suffering pushing him by force to the Sitra Achra, where he is in conflict with the Creator. And now he's turning to the other side. He's becoming one with the Creator. The suffering cannot push him away any longer. The light is already shining so big that even while he is suffering, even within the darkness, Gam ki elech begetz hamoves, lo iroro ki atu imodi. I'm not afraid of the suffering because I know you are you and I am I, and that's never going to change. And so then the light of the soul is starting to shine. The light of the soul is now shining more than the darkness of the body. Well, Usa is Baruch Shemoi, Or Ein Sof, Amachayis HaKoil, Ekshod Mekabel Yisrim Ba'al B'Simcha Nasa Yichud. Then he's uniting with the source. V'Mekarev V'Mekasher Medavik HaKli V'Aguf. He's bringing closer and tying up and uniting the vessel, the body, Bechinas Tzimtzum V'Din, that represents the suffering, the spiritual body. That's called Elohim. Elohim is the divine force that represents the Midas Hadin, the attribute of judgment. So he takes this body, he takes this attribute of judgment, and he unites it. El Haneshama Shehu HaSimcha V'Achayis V'Ruchnis. He unites that with the happiness and the aliveness and the spirit that comes from the soul. And so when there is suffering, he says, yeah, now I'm creating a vessel for more soul. Now I can experience more divinity and still stay within my body because I've prepared for this. I've experienced my distance, and now I can experience my closeness. So he says, if he does that, if he manages to get to such a level where the truth is so real to him that it overcomes all his illusions, so then automatically he goes from the world of body, because the pain was holding him in the world of body, he returns to the world of soul. The world of soul is the world of compassion. The world of body is the world of judgment. The body doesn't have a choice. It needs certain things, and when they're not met, then there's an issue. But the soul can forgive. The soul is the world of compassion. The soul, there are rules, but even if you don't follow the rules, the soul can decide to just waive the rules. And so he returns from the world of judgment to a world of compassion. What's the advice in order to be able to attain this level? Everything that seems to be hurting the body, remember that always, for everything that happens, the goal is the betterment of the soul. So you identify as soul, and then you will be less subject to the problems that are prevalent in the world. The problems that are prevalent in the world, they limit the body. The environment has control of your body. And so your body is going along with the collective, and whatever they experience is somehow going to affect you. But your soul, if you learn how to protect your soul, if you learn how to heal your soul is not subject to anyone else's interference. The soul is what's yours. It's what's yours to keep, and it's your duty to protect in every way you know how. And so in the world of soul, that's where you're protected. That's where no one can have access. And so unite everything that has to do with judgment, everything that has to do with din, with tzimtzum, with restriction, with suffering, unite that with the soul. Remember, the goal is always the soul. The goal is never the body. The body is just there to serve. It's at the service of the soul. The goal is always the soul. And so everything that's taking place in the world, including when the body is getting hurt, it's all for the betterment of the soul. If the individual soul has already perished, so then it's for the benefit of the collective soul. But this is what this is all about. This is what it was always about. This is the only thing it can be about. It's not about anything else. And so this is very real. The soul knows that it's real. We are under some type of a spell. So we think that there's a different story. But the real story is playing out, and the real story has a purpose and a reason of the way of it being the way that it is. And we were meant to participate in that. We were meant to know that. We were meant to live that. And so whenever we see that life seems to be in a state of restriction, in a state of din, in a state of judgment, so then we should remember that, yeah, for the body, it seems that way. But for the soul, this is progress. The soul is the purpose of everything that's taking place. This is what's necessary to balance the soul. And the soul, in our case, is trying to awaken. The soul has been in a deep slumber because of the suffering that we've caused each other. And so the soul wants to awaken. The soul is in a more peaceful state, relatively speaking, if we will invest that into developing the soul. But if we use the peacetime just to bicker with each other or to try to achieve goals as an individual, and we don't realize the soul, we don't realize the collective, we don't realize the purpose, we don't realize that there is a life that needs to be lived here, that the divine is waiting to reveal, so then the soul will try to wake us up in all kinds of calamities, because the end result is so important. The difference in the quality of life is so vast. The good that it wants to give us is so meaningful and so consequential that every day that is wasted is like we would lose millions of lives. Every day is like we're losing millions of lives. If we would understand the difference in the quality of the life force that we have inside of us, but even more important, the Shekhinah, the one that's receiving all the life based on what is happening on this planet. And so every day is a catastrophe. Even if we think it's okay, it's not okay. It's very deeply not okay. Now we're tasting a little bit of what she feels every day. And so this is also a revelation. This is also the divine speaking. This is also the soul saying, hey, you need to pay attention. Because it's all him. There can be no one else. He designed it, and he designed it perfectly. Perfect design means that it's happening the way that it needs to happen. The output is according to the input. The input we're in charge of. And so it's all him. Yeah, we don't remember that we're him, so we don't know how to be him. And yet we're him. The importance of it is that when he says something, it's meaningful in all the worlds. And since we're him, it means that when we say something, it's important in all the worlds. And so even though we don't remember how to be him, we're doing it. It's happening. We're giving instructions. We're making life go. We're sending angels. We're not just him in some type of a theoretical story. We're him. We just don't know how to be him. And so the results are what they are. But it works perfectly. There's no mistake. Nothing is off. No one has forgotten anything. It's just that we're doing it. It's live. And we don't know even that we're doing it. We're distracted with something else. He's standing on the stage. The stadium is full. And he thinks he's on a private phone call. And so this is so real that we can't contain it. This is why we need chinuch, we need training, we need to develop the organs so that they can contain the truth, so that they can contain at least enough. From there, it will already develop on its own. It's just training on how to be alive. We're already doing it. We're already alive. It's already happening. It's just training on how to do it accurately so that we don't cause damage, so that it turns out properly. And yet this training, it requires such sensitivity. It requires such nuanced development. It requires so many protections so that things, important, integral things, don't get damaged. That we've lost the way, we've lost the meaning, we've lost the internal knowledge that the Torah is trying to teach us. The Torah is our guide to becoming Him. That's why it says, meaning it's all the same thing. If the soul develops, and how does it develop? By understanding the wisdom of the Torah, then it will become a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So it's all the same thing. It's one thing when they are united. When the soul understands the wisdom, then it is a representative of the Creator. When the soul doesn't understand the wisdom, it represents the other side that's fighting with the Creator. And we see how far that can go. People can go low, people can go far. The protections are based on our own behaviors and our own understandings. If we understand nothing and we behave without any principles, then there's no limit to how bad it can get. As we've seen, humanity has experienced. None of this is theoretical. This is real life experience. Today we live in a world of media. We live in an alternate reality, but the reality that we live in is a very serious and very real reality. It's no joke and it's no game. And that's because it's all Him. The responsibility is unlimited. We have to take it seriously. It has to become real to us because it is real. We can't hide from it any longer. And it's the greatest good. It's the most wonderful experience. It's the most beautiful. It's the deepest pleasure that one could ever have. There's no lack. The only difficulty is finding it. Once we found it, that's the end of our troubles. And yet finding it, because of how we are used to thinking, because of how we are used to using our organs, finding it is a lot of work. Healing our hearts is a lot of work. But it's all the same one. He is the problem, He is the solution, He is the work. And He is the satisfaction after we've succeeded at our work. It's all the same being that we're working with. It's all the same one that we are. We're not going to be anything else. We're not going to become something. We are that thing right now. We're going to develop access to what already is. And then we're going to know. Then we're going to start preparing to be members of the world to come. then we're going to be ready for when HaKadosh Baruch Hu motzi chama min atika, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu removes the sun from its shade, from its cover. And he reveals who he is, and everyone knows who he is. That's the day we're all waiting for. That's the day that the whole world was created for. All the angels, all the planets, all the galaxies are waiting for that day. The reason that they all invested all this massive energy in infinite space, all to be able to shine to this planet, to create these complex bodies. And so that one day, one of these bodies is going to wake up and realize who he is. And then it's going to spread throughout the planet. And then life is never going to be the same again. Everything that was will seem like a bad dream. Then we will have a good laugh. Because we're going to know we're safe. We're going to know that it could never happen ever again. No one is going to deteriorate in their mental health to a level where they are willing to cause damage to a human soul. And then, the glory of the Creator will be for eternity. Yismach Hashem b'masa. Hashem will rejoice in his creations. How will we know? When you see them shining, that's the sign. When the creations shine, it means the Creator is rejoicing in them. It's the light of the Creator that's going to shine. It's the Ziv HaShechina. We look at a human being, we're going to see the Ziv HaShechina. We're going to see the joy of the one who is running the world. Imagine you can create a world, and you've created the world, and you have all these creatures, and they're all worshiping you. Imagine how you feel. That's going to be the face of every human being. That's how it's going to feel. That's what it's going to feel like to be human. It's called Tzadikim Yoshvim, B'Tresayim B'Nesayim, B'Nehenem Ziv HaShechina. They're sitting, and they have a crown on their head. The crown is the crown of wisdom, the crown of the awakening of the soul that resides within that brain. And they're enjoying the glory of the Shekhinah, the presence of the one who is feeding life to everything that we can see, and way beyond everything that we can see. On every human face, we're going to see that revelation. They're all going to remember. They're all going to know. Those who are not capable of knowing will no longer be here to bother us. May it happen now.